The El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order. I'd like to ask the city clerk to call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing after that for a brief moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the July 25th, 2023 meeting and the agenda of the August 8th, 2023 meeting in accordance with state law, City Council and Housing Authority policy. We have two presentations on today's agenda, but the presentation for Camp Runamutt has been moved to September 12th meeting. So now we have a presentation for a National Night Out. I'd like to invite Marketing Manager Chris Bird to tell us all about this. Hi, Chris.
Good afternoon. Could we switch over on the... So National Night Out this year is an event that is to promote the positive interaction between law enforcement and community. This was one that we felt would be a great opportunity to really exploit in El Cajon, both for our community as well as for recruitment efforts to show what a great interaction that our police department has here. So we had a tremendous success with this. So first, I'd like to thank these two guys. I have never worked an event with a police department before, and I came to them with a harebrained idea to work with Amanda on, and they let me in and let me help run with it. We had the success of it was, as you can see here, a lot of interaction where we were able to showcase what we do for the community, teach them about our different divisions, have a lot of positive interaction, as well as a lot of PR, which is definitely going to help with our recruitment efforts going forward. I did have a little bit of pressure on me, not that my boss is generally intimidating, but he did show up like this to the event. Did shake me a little bit. And as you can see here, we had just an extremely successful turnout. We had a great crowd to see all the demonstrations, participate in the raffles. Delana Bennett, who's a local radio show host who lives here in El Cajon, she's very proud to be in El Cajon, and so she volunteered her time as the MC for the event. That brought out a lot of her listeners as well. We had a great showing of our police department. So we had all the different vehicles there. Kids, families were able to interact with those, take pictures. We had all of our different divisions. Particularly the SWAT team was always a great attraction, just showing all the fun tools that they have to work with. We had our K-9 unit, which did 3 different demonstrations through the evening. I'm not sure what poor Milad did in a past life, but I've seen him in that bite suit for several years of National Night Out. We had our mounted unit, which everyone really seems to enjoy going up and talking to those guys. Our drone display, also really fun, got a lot of attention where people could see on the monitors on the side of the van what those drones do and the tools that they are used for our police department to keep us safe. We have many different partner agencies. California Highway Patrol came out, had a great display there. San Diego Humane Society. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol did an amazing job. They had such an interactive booth for a partner agency that was there, really got a lot of attraction. Our military was there doing a lot of different fitness competitions, engaging our residents. And then a lot of different local organizations. So we had the San Diego Wave that came out, had some games there for people to play and interact with. The Home Depot, an amazing partner for this event. The manager there, they've always taken part in this by doing kids' crafts. They had no idea the amount of people we were going to have this year, and the store manager kept sending employees back to get more crafts. They ended up doing craft projects for over 500 kids that night. We had different barbers from Parkway Plaza that came out and did free haircuts. We had Walmart sponsored our first responder chalk art competition, where they had donated all the supplies and a ton of prizes for all the kids. We had many different food vendors, local businesses. One in particular I want to give a shout out to is Joy, who is the owner now of Main Street Donuts and Deli. She had called me the night before and was like, hey, do you think 500 cookies is enough? And I said, well, I will appreciate 500 cookies, but no, I don't think that's enough. And she stayed up till 3 that morning making 1,500 cookies for us. Dunkin' Donuts, I made the mistake of trying to work on a police event without inviting a donut vendor, and I got called on that. So I went to them the day before, and with a 1 day's notice, they came out with 1,000 of their little munchkins to donate. So just a tremendous amount of community support from our businesses. We had face painters, balloon artists. The Mercedes had sponsored our Ninja Nation fitness competition, which was awesome. That had a long line the entire evening. And we had Hardcore Fitness, which is a local gym here, that they closed their gyms that night, sent out all their trainers to be there to help kids get through the obstacles and work with that. So Ridge, the band that came out and played. We had a dance floor, line dancing. Again, the raffle with Delana had hosted that. We had great raffle prizes from Dixie Line, from Home Depot, Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, Hardcore Fitness, many others. And it was not just the police department, obviously, working on this. Became a citywide event for our entire city staff. Our Parks and Work department, they were out there starting at 2 in the morning, power washing, street sweeping the parking lot, helping to assist setting up. Our Parks and Rec department, unfortunately, they worked so fast, they were like ninja speed, that with 3 professional photographers, we didn't get a picture of any of them there. But they were also out there helping to set up all the tables, the canopies. So really great support there. And then just, again, from our local businesses, we had many of the car dealerships were our platinum sponsors of this event. Mercedes, Toyota, Honda, BMW, Ford, and then just so many other small businesses that came in to be a part of this event. So it was our law enforcement, it was our businesses, and thousands of the members of our community coming together for a fun night.
The support was so good from so many vendors. I think it would be appropriate to create little plaques for these vendors that you designate so they could take back and show in their businesses. It's good business for a business to show that the city appreciates them.
Absolutely.
So the cost of plaques is next to nothing, and I think that would go a long way towards good relations.
All right.
Thank you, Chris, for your hard work. I know you were pounding the pavement in the community looking for donations from businesses to sponsor the event. So thank you. Thank you to all the staff and fire department and police department that made this event great. I can't remember a better national night out that we've had in the city. So you've really set the standard pretty high. So we'll see what we can come up next year.
Chris, you did a wonderful job. Thank you. It was great working with you that morning, getting everything set up. And the only thing I think we need to do is to maybe partner with a party rental place and get some tents over like the dance floor, extra tables, that type of deal.
Yeah, it's a warm time of the year to do an event. So
yeah,
definitely
unfortunately,
need some shade.
we can't control the weather and we can't control the date, but it was a great event. I talked to many, many residents, and they were having a blast. Really enjoyed all of the events, enjoyed everything it had to offer, and so kudos to you for getting all of this started, and kudos to the staff who helped you out, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you. It's a good partnership with all the different city departments here. So
Thank you again. So I think that brings us to agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
Council members? That brings us to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you have any consent items that you would like to pull? No? Staff?
No, sir.
Okay, then I'll make a motion then to approve the consent items. Please vote.
And for the record, sir, there are no speaker cards for consent items,
Thank you.
and motion carries by unanimous vote.
Brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
Yes, sir, we do. We have 4 speaker cards. The first one is Brenda Hammond.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Graham. Mr. Mitchell. Brenda Hammond, East County. So before I say what I have to say, I got a box of crayons, 40 cents at Walmart, by the way. So in this box of crayons, there's 3 primary colors. There's yellow, red, and blue. And then there's black, white, and brown. So black, white, and brown are not primary colors, but they're used to make different colors. The white is used to lighten colors. The black is used to darken. The brown is brown. So just keep that in mind. So there's no superior color, is what I'm saying. Black and white and brown is not. They're not superior. So, as I said at the last time I was here for public comment, I've been assaulted once again by black women. This makes 7 times in 10 years. I will not get into the details as I filed the latest complaint in La Mesa. I appreciate Health and Human Services, although they have not followed up with me on assaults because they said I wasn't paranoid. They're correct. That area of my brain was taken out to stop the seizures I used to have. So when the latest black women came up to me, pushing and probing me and saying, she's scared, they were wrong. I believe they're harassing me because the surgery was done by a black man, finishing his residency at UCSD. I was his last project before he graduated. He and Dr. Oxney, who was Dean of Medicine at the time, did the surgery. Back to HHS. They need to do a better job vetting the people that volunteer for them, because the women that messed with me, where am I? Are volunteers for them to go out to the community and help people with mental illness. I think they create mental illness so they have a job, job security. Mayor Wells, you know what I'm talking about. So just so you know, these women came to Lemon Grove Library last Saturday to do a presentation, a meet and greet for Up to Us San Diego. I'm shutting them down. Thank you. Those are the women that messed with me at a restaurant in La Mesa. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Next speaker is Michael Barnes.
Hi, my name is Mike Barnes. I've lived on Orange Street down the street here for 24 years. I've learned to coexist with the homeless situation. I've had faces in my window with a convicted child molester, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My concern is the building across the street that they're going to build, the East Regional Crisis Center. What happened basically with me, I was not notified. I found out from somebody that lived in Fletcher Hills that this was going down, so the notification was kind of late. At that point, I did an unofficial petition. I walked the neighborhood. I got 100 signatures stating people were not in favor of the program or the building, and 90% of them didn't even know that it was going on. So I've been walking the streets trying to inform people that this is going on. I've done meetings, etc. They had a meeting in the parking lot of the building. They suggested I go to Oceanside to check out a new facility that was built up there. I did that. I went into the people that I needed to talk to. Nobody had any answers. A guy came out, a young kid came out, social worker. I'm not the guy you need to talk to. He'll be in Wednesday. I'll have him give you a call. No communication whatsoever. Basically, I've been trying to follow this up, and my concerns are this: the communication between the city and the county. I don't know where that's at, but what I'm seeing is it's not there. Okay, and I'm here just because I don't want to wait till it's too late. I'm worried about what happens when they come out of that parking lot of the county land and they go onto the sidewalks of El Cajon. The responsibility shifts. As soon as they walk off that parking lot, the county, it's not their responsibility anymore. So if somebody decides they want to leave and they've sobered up, it's 3:30 in the morning, I'm assuming they're going to be released. How are we going to handle this transfer of people so that they're not staying on our streets? Because we all know what's going on. And I know I've been to homeless meetings. I see some familiar faces here. And so I know it's a concern. But as far as the new building, we already have 2 rehabs over there right next to it. One's a daycare, one's another thing. So anyways, what I'm doing here is to just want to let you know that I know, because the people out there, they don't know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I just want to see if anybody had any questions.
Yeah, I just want, if there's more meetings coming up on how we're going to do it.
I just want to make sure I understand. You're talking about the old Home Fed building?
Pardon me?
You're talking about the old Home Fed building?
I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Are you talking about the old Home Fed building?
No, I'm talking about the old city tax building.
Assessor's office, yeah.
Okay, I think it was a Home Fed building before it was the assessor's building.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The architecture looks okay. I like
So-
the building.
If I can make you feel a little bit better, this is not necessarily a detox center. This is a place where it's a central place to bring people that are on psychiatric holds. And the idea is to get them from here out to the appropriate hospital and not impact the emergency room.
Okay, there you go.
And I know a little bit about this because I worked in psychiatric hospitals for a long part of my life. And I was actually pushing this idea for years and years. So I'm glad they're adopting it. It's gonna make it easier for folks to go to the emergency room. The one thing we were worried about, and Graham and I met with them, was that they would be releasing people to the streets. They've assured us that they've got transportation, so nobody's going to be released to the streets. These people, if it doesn't work out that way, we're going to have to revisit it. But what they're telling us very adamantly is that each person is going to be taken back to their residence, or they're going to be taken to the shelter where they're going to be, or they're going to be taken to the hospital where they're going to be admitted. And I think a lot of these people are going to be admitted in the psychiatric hospital, because to get put on a 72-hour hold and taken to a facility like this, the chances of you going to the hospital are pretty good. So I think what's going to happen is people are going to come here, they're going to be evaluated, they're going to get a few hours of treatment, and then it's be admitted to Grossmont or be admitted to Scripps or be admitted to Paradise Valley. So I don't believe that this is going to result in people being brought in from out of the county and then filtered back out into our city. If I thought that, I would fight it tooth and nail. So, and I appreciate you bringing it up. And
I went up there, and the people, I couldn't get any answers. I went and talked to businesses across the street, And they said definitely that their traffic had increased since that building went up. So that kind of gave me a red alert, and I just wanted to make sure that I'm just doing the citizen thing. You know?
No, and this is great. When you have a concern like this, you should come here and talk to us about it. Did you have any more questions about that?
Oh, that's reassuring, and I'm sure if there's any newsletters, there's further going on. They're starting to, they're going to take that building down in September. It was July, and when they start doing the demo and all that kind of stuff. It's that so many people don't know what's going on. That's,
Graham, I assume that we're going to have some communication.
The county's actually been relatively helpful in providing communication on this, and in fact, when we complained about some of some transients accessing their building, they immediately put up a fence. Initially, they were not going to put up the fence until construction started, and they put it up immediately. So I've been really grateful that they've been responsive. The other concern, Mr. Barnes is exactly right. We were exactly concerned about those exact same things. That's why the county met with each of the members of the council about this. But I also reached out to the city managers of Vista and Oceanside, where there are similar facilities, to ask what does it look like in terms of neighborhood impact, calls for service. And they said to this point, there's been zero impact in their community. So it's been a positive thing for them. The only impact has been much less wall time for officers to get to dropping off an individual. And so they can drop the individual off much faster than at a hospital somewhere outside the city.
Do you know what he means by that?
Pardon me?
Do you know what he means by that? Wall time? So when a paramedic or a police officer takes a patient to the hospital, if a bed is not ready, that police officer or paramedic has to hug the wall with his patient for sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours. That means this program is going to be helpful to us because our police officer is going to be able to drop somebody off and get out and back to business. And so we see that as a net positive.
Like I said, I got different words from the people, the businesses, but that might be their normal crowd. I'm not going to dispute that. That's what I'm hoping for, because I know everybody needs to do their part because of the huge issue down in El Cajon and everywhere. So I will take that it's a go, I guess.
Well, let's wait and see. Like Ronald Reagan
I just
said,
want to make sure that I'm involved in the process a little bit more, and the community's involved in the process, because it's getting to the point where the process is going to happen.
we want to trust but verify. So let's revisit it once it opens up. Yeah, Phil.
If you wouldn't mind leaving your contact info, I'll do my best, because you referenced the communication between the city and the county. I will reach out to our county supervisor, Joel Anderson, and see if we can get some kind of a meeting or town hall with the residents.
I didn't get anything back from him, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so
My
if you
phone
want to
number
leave
and
your
information's on
info
the
with
card.
the city clerk, and then I'll do
Yeah.
my best to
Just
communicate
let me
with you,
know,
maybe set
because
something up.
I don't want to wait till it's too late.
No, yeah, and it's obvious that the community has concerns, so I'll do my best to reach out, and maybe the county can do a presentation for the residents
great.
and businesses surrounding it. It's a great idea.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next speaker is Michael Cartwright Sr.
Hello, Mr. Cartwright.
How you doing? Most of you probably don't know who I am. I came to El Cajon when I was 8 days old. I lived here all my life. I'm glad to see they had a program. We used to have a friendship festival. I don't know if anybody remembers Joan Shoemaker. We had a lot of programs, especially for seniors. Now, I always thought the city council ran the city manager, not the city manager running the city council. 3 or 4 months ago, I wanted to see you guys about, I'm a member of WOW, Widows and Widowers. I've been a widow now for 6 years. Almost 60 years ago, I sent my wife home from Boston to my home. Okay, and she passed away 6 years ago. 6 months ago, I found a group. Okay, we have this meeting once a week or once a month. It was at a Lutheran church, and it got sold, so they can't meet there anymore. And they have a game. They play a Mexican train. It's like dominoes. Anyhow, I requested to talk for you to see if we could get one of the park centers for one day, a week, a month rather, to have this. I was told instead it's going to cost $24 an hour, minimum of 3 hours. And my thing is, I got money. That's fine. But a lot of these widows don't. Over 95% of them are women. Us men don't live long as widows. And I was kind of surprised when I'm quoted prices. Widows and widowers, and most of them, by the way, live in East County. The Lutheran Church was on Johnson Street. We have a happy hour over off of 77 Hamishaw. It's a bar or a restaurant. And I live over on Bosworth Street. I lived on that street for 66 years. I went to Meridian at 5. I graduated from Grand Hills at 16 and a half, was in the military at 17. I was in Southeast Asia, all over the world. 10 years ago, I dropped out of politics. But I was kind of surprised when I submitted the request to hear from before you guys about the WOW group. Instead, they sent me an email. I'm not big on emails, even though I have an email. I may check it once every couple months. But I sure get letters from you guys when you want something. And I don't know what to tell you. 2nd Street could have been bought by my dad for $1,860 in 1950. How's that for property? And we call it a value of opportunity. What opportunity is there if you don't have friendship? I thought we used to be friendly. That's not much.
Well, sir, I'm really sorry you've had such a bad experience. Can you leave your information?
Oh, she's got it.
I want to sit and talk about the options. There must be some way to help you.
Well, like I said, I can afford it. That's not the problem.
No, I understand. You're standing up for the other people that can't, and that's understandable. We should have community spaces for people having groups like this. It's completely understandable. So let me see what our options are, and we'll get back to you very soon.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Oh, well, it'll have to be.
I appreciate it. Thanks for coming, sir.
Our last speaker is Roland Slade.
Hey, Roland.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and City Council and the city staff. As she said, I'm Roland Slade. I'm the lead pastor of Meridian Southern Baptist Church here in El Cajon. And today I'm here in my role as the chair of the steering committee of the East County Homeless Task Force. First and foremost, on behalf of the task force, I want to say thank you. El Cajon stepped forward and invested in us early on, and for that we are thankful. We are a group of volunteers across the East region with a part-time coordinator that helps coordinate and publicize our efforts. El Cajon's donations have helped the task force facilitate public meetings, bring people across the region together for several years. You collectively took a chance on a new fledgling organization and gave us financial support. You did what other cities would not do. And so with the city's funding, we'll let you know that what we've done is we've identified and monitored and responded to legislation that affected the unhoused population and access to affordable housing. We facilitated collaboration to bring emergency and permanent supportive and affordable housing to the East region. We've championed housing and services policies to the benefit of all residents. And we've amplified East County housing and shelter needs into county and statewide discussions and policies. We've collectively used the resources to establish the ECAassist.org website, where we publicize resources for the city and for all of the cities of East County and the unincorporated areas. And service providers use this for their clients and residents searching for services. We also have produced the printed pocket guides that update, and they're updated and they're distributed again through East County cities in the unincorporated neighborhoods. We coordinated a panel discussion about homelessness in Lemon Grove. We established the San Diego Housing Federation's HEAL network in East County. And our volunteers, we partnered and staffed and managed the point-in-time deployment site. And so where we're going from here, so that you know, CASA is now our fiscal agent. They have been our fiscal agent since January of this year. Previously, it was the East County Chamber of Commerce. And the East County Homeless Task Force never officially stated that it supports housing first. So we want to make that clear. And our vision is a range of housing options for East County communities, ensuring that everyone who lives here has a place to call home. So each of you as council members have different ideas about the causes of homelessness, and we agree with you. Moving forward, we hope to engage and inform and advocate for a crisis response, prevention, and long-term affordable housing. But the thing that I want to make perfectly clear today is that we want to thank you for your support.
Thank you, Roland. Let me see if there might be some questions for you, Roland. Steve, go ahead.
Good afternoon. You know, this is the first time that I've heard the milestones that the task force has achieved. And a year ago, when we were talking about suspending the $5,000 in funding, we said, we just don't know what value the El Cajon taxpayers are getting for the money. And that was a year ago. So for a year to go past, and what we did here was Vista and Oceanside are doing great. If only East County cities could do better. We're thinking, what are we, chopped liver? And so what you're describing here is overdue. It's the first time that we've heard that you've done this and this and this and this. I'm open to refinancing our support if there's a commitment for the task force to tell the people of El Cajon what they're getting for their donations, because the other cities aren't doing it. And tomorrow I'm meeting with Donnie D from Rescue Mission. He wants a place in El Cajon because no one else will do it. And we're a little beleaguered at people coming to ask us, will you help, will you help? And we don't know the value. Now I know. So thank you for coming and telling us the value. I'm open to refunding that if there is a commitment to report to the council, perhaps semi-annually, this is what the people of El Cajon are getting. I'm open to refunding that.
Well, I can tell you, Steve, that we will. We are willing to report. In fact, there's some of the volunteers and the agencies are here today to support the fact that we came to say thank you and to let you know this is what we have been doing. We haven't done all the things that maybe you had expected us to do, but now we're coming sharing what we have done, and we plan to continue to do more.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the spirit in which you all have come.
We also, if I could just add one thing, we also don't intend for El Cajon to as a preacher, I'm just getting warmed up. We don't expect El Cajon to carry the financial burden of the East County Homeless Task Force. It's the East County Homeless Task Force, not the El Cajon Homeless Task Force. So we plan to talk to other cities and other city councils about this.
Does the task force receive funding from any other East County city?
We do receive some funding from the city of Santee.
Just Santee?
Just Santee.
Okay, thank you.
Else? So, Roland, we're old friends, so I'll just be straight with you. It was disappointing for us in the sense that we feel that El Cajon is doing an exemplary job with the homeless. So we look at the numbers, and we are spending more money per capita than any other city in the region, including San Diego, including Chula Vista, National City. We have been innovative in trying to find solutions that really help people, not just kind of shuffle people through the system, but, places like the East County Transitional Living Center, which get people off the street for maybe 2-3 years at a time, helping them get sober and to reestablish a place. And we've been in an ongoing battle with some of the other municipalities and specifically the county. And honestly, what we felt has been taking advantage of our city and putting an undue burden on the city of El Cajon and telling us that they don't even want to talk about it, that it's shut up and take it. And we would expect our homeless or East County Homeless Task Force to stand up and rally behind us and say, El Cajon's a great place. They're doing a lot of good things. We feel really good about the work that's happening out there. And that's not what we've heard. What we've heard is a lot of criticism of El Cajon and a lot of taking up the other side of that. And I think that people just kind of threw up their hands and said, you know what? I mean, we don't know what they're doing. We don't have any sense of what we're getting for our money. They don't like us. They say bad things about us in the press. They make our jobs harder. And I think that's what brought us to where we were last week. And I'm with Steve. We can make up and get along, but and you're your own organization. You don't have to shill for us, but we would like an honest and fair vision that goes out to the world about El Cajon. And I think those are the points of contention. I think we can get past those. Then at least from my point of view, I'm willing to relook at it.
Well, I think that I can speak for the representative of the task force that are here today. We can get past that. We're prepared to do that, and to step up and be more vocal. Try to as much as possible be peaceful in dealing with the county and at the other cities. It's kind of, I guess the best way to explain it, I used to have black hair, now I have white hair, and I'm getting closer to the finish line, and now's the time to just go all out and really try to make a difference. And we really think that we can make a difference. We think that the city of El Cajon has made a difference and has been an example. I know that firsthand at what we've worked together to do at Meridian, and it's time for us to step into that role as a champion in other cities in the East region.
So, anybody else? What I'll tell you I'll do is I'll ask our city manager to re-agendize this item, and we'll go through the process.
Can I ask you a favor?
You could ask me anything.
Can you wait on doing that until you're satisfied that we've accomplished what we said we'd do?
Well, it's going to take a little while to get it all on the agenda. Why don't we start the process, and you come up when you come, and you'll have a plan, and I think there'll be plenty of time to get that squared away.
Okay, I'm willing to do that. I just want it to be clear that that's not why I came today.
I understand.
I came today because we need to say thank you for what you did.
I appreciate it. I assume that most of this was a miscommunication and misunderstanding about vision and about where everybody was at with this, and that just like families, not my family, but other families I hear will argue about things and then have to come to the table and fix it. So,
okay, all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any more?
No other speakers, sir.
Okay. There are no written communications on today's agenda. There are no public hearings on today's agenda. And we have 4 administrative reports on today's agenda. And by the way, you guys don't have to stay through all this stuff. If you don't want to, you're free to go. Yeah, you're welcome. I know you're being polite. You're like, how long will this meeting be? Okay, item 8 is a presentation regarding the Surplus Land Act requirements for the Civic Center redevelopment. I'll ask Assistant City Manager Vince DiMaggio to please tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you recall, on the July 25th meeting of the City Council, you received a presentation from the City Manager outlining several options regarding redevelopment of city-owned parcels in the Civic Center area. Virtually any of the options that you choose to direct us to pursue is going to require compliance with the Surplus Land Act, which is a state law. And as you also know, we have worked with Cosmont companies for about the last year as our consultants on various iterations of potential redevelopment options within this area prior to you receiving the presentation at the last meeting. With us here today is Brian Moncrief. He's the Senior Vice President of Cosmont Companies. He's the preeminent expert on the Surplus Land Act, and we felt that it was very important that you receive a presentation on what exactly is required in the Surplus Land Act for us to pursue one of these options if the council wants us to move forward with redevelopment of city-owned property within the Civic Center area. So I'd like to introduce Brian. He's been a tremendous help to both the city manager and I, and our relationship has been very good over the last year as we've learned more and more about this. And so I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Vince. Hi, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. Brian Moncrief, Senior Vice President with Cajon Companies. Tonight's presentation is brief, and if there are questions along the way, because some of it's a little bit in depth, please feel free to stop me, but I'm also happy to answer questions at the end. Let's see here. Let's first start with turning this on, shall we? Spacebar? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, as Mr. DiMaggio mentioned, tonight's presentation is really to go over some of the statutory required processes, procedures regarding the Surplus Land Act, giving an overview of those provisions, the mandates, and give you guys a sense on what we believe at the end of this really are the primary next steps. This is just illustrative for purposes of discussion tonight. This is really your Civic Center with adjacent ownership, just to set the stage for the rest of the slides in the presentation. So what is the Surplus Land Act? Well, it's been on the books since about the late 60s, 1960s, but was modified recently in 2020 to really expand the provisions of it to include more public agencies, to ramp up enforcement provisions, as well as sort of take away what we knew under redevelopment as economic development opportunities to advance for revenue generating purposes and other specific economic development initiatives. So a lot of that change in this bill that sort of usurps what we knew back in the redevelopment days as a redevelopment agency, what we were able to do. So under this new structure, all the public agencies in California really need to follow a prescribed set of rules and regs before it decides to embark on selling or leasing a piece of property. So as far as the overview and context of this bill, I mean, the origin, it really is the state's massive push to try to address the affordable housing crisis. I mean, the purpose of it is really to bring or give affordable housing developers a first bite at the apple in terms of submitting their interest in public agency-owned land. And in doing so, mandating that, you know, public agencies, including cities, including special districts, including school districts, and so on, are all now subject to this act and have to follow it with certain exceptions. The process itself is about 180 days from start to finish, but we'll go over that in subsequent slides so you can see how that all breaks out. Before we get there, though, what we typically, you know, when we enter or engage a city in this kind of assignment is to really think about going through the process and having these questions in mind. What properties do you own? What are they worth? A lot of this you've discussed already with city management. What's the highest and best use of those assets? Do you want housing on those properties? Specifically, what type of housing, what product type, and so forth? Are there other public agency uses that need to be considered in conjunction with a future development on these specific properties? And who are your adjacent owners, and are they potential JV partners at the end of the day? So knowing these questions and understanding these questions in advance really helps set the stage for going through this required disposition process. So at a high level, it's really 4 primary steps. Step 1 is really taking the formal action of declaring the property or properties surplus or exempt surplus land. Step 2 is really issuing a notice, a required notice to the statutorily required public agencies, school districts, and so on, that need to receive adequate notice, as well as a list of developers that HCD maintains of affordable housing developers that need to get noticed. That notice goes out for a 60-day period. Should the city receive interest within that 60-day period, there's a 90-day, which is step 3, there's a 90-day good faith negotiation period that needs to commence shortly thereafter that expiration of the 60 days. And then step 4 is really closing out the process with HCD, because at the end of this process, we need to go back to the state California Department of Housing and Community Development and get them to give us a letter of compliance saying we followed the law, and then we could proceed with a transaction, either with an affordable housing developer or to put it out to the market via an RFP or some other means to solicit interest in a future development or buyer or investor that we see fit, that the city deems fit. Now, if the property is declared exempt surplus, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide, then step 1, you can really skip steps 2 and 3 to step 4. Step 4 is closing out the process with HCD. So let's talk about exempt surplus land for a minute. So the first question you ask yourself is, well, does my property fit within the box of these exemptions, which are pretty limiting? The grandfathered land, which is the first one, really relates to if the property was under an agreement before a certain period of time. This period of time is 2019. So a lot of those agreements that were in place prior to don't really apply in the city's case. So the grandfathered land provision really wouldn't apply. Land destined for affordable housing. This could, in some sense, relate back to what could happen ultimately in the Civic Center. Is it an affordable housing project that sets aside a certain percentage to lower income households, or is it a mixed use project that has 300 plus units and sets aside 25% for lower income households? So if it's a project that's destined for a future affordable housing deal, then you could ultimately fit under the exemptions that the statute provides. Now, it could be land that's just dedicated for other public uses. It could be a public purpose use, whether it's parking or a park or some other public purpose that would qualify as an exemption. Or it could be land that's just not suitable. It's too small. There are too many conditions on the property. It's not developable, or it's a former street or right-of-way, and that's another exemption that could apply when you're going through the process of evaluating what properties the city would consider. So should it not meet any of these exemption tests, which I think in conjunction with looking at the Civic Center, I think we want to look at the statute just to make sure there aren't any exemptions that might apply. But should there be exemptions that don't apply, then we want to go through the same pathway I just described, that 4-step process. What's key in the statute that I think it's important for the council to understand is that should you go through this process and an interested party doesn't want to pay fair market value for the land, the statute doesn't require a public agency to sell that property for less than fair market value. It also doesn't take away the city's discretion to approve entitlements or a project down the road. Key aspects of the bill that I think they put in there to purposely, make sure that cities understood that they aren't actually being, they're forced to go through a process, but not necessarily sell a property for less than fair market value if it's not in their interest to do so. Now, should you go through this process and you either don't agree on the price or terms with a specific entity, or nobody submits interest, you can then go back to HCD and get a letter of compliance saying you followed the law. But what's tied to that property in the future is a covenant that says that at any time in the future, should 10 or more housing units be built on this site, then 15% of those units need to be set aside for lower income households. And so that covenant runs with the land. Now, if you're going to do a commercial project or you're going to do a hotel or something that's not, residential, then that covenant doesn't necessarily apply to you. But in the event that housing is built in the future, they've got this residual covenant that gets placed on the property prior to a future transaction, even if you make it through the process and you get a letter of compliance. So this leads into enforcement. So should HCD decide that you're in violation of some provision of the Surplus Land Act, and you go forward with a transaction that gets commenced, they're going to penalize 30% of the final sale price of the property for your first violation. Should you do it again, then 50% of the final sale price of the property will be imposed as a direct enforcement. And they've gotten to the point where, I mean, the city of Anaheim is probably the sort of the biggest, I guess, newsworthy Surplus Land Act deal that was settled with the state. So the state decided that, this is the Anaheim Angels Stadium deal, and the state decided that, well, we didn't think you went through the process right. San Bernardino's going through the same issue, so they settled for an amount of whatever the penalty would be to be used locally for affordable housing purposes. In that case, the deal, in the case of Anaheim, that deal fell apart, but it would have been a $90 million hit to the sale price in order to actually, enforce that and preserve that money for future affordable housing purposes. So I say this just so you understand the context and the landscape we're in as it relates to the Surplus Land Act and how HCD is really sort of the main, authoritative body, and so sort of playing referee on which properties comply, which ones don't, and then imposing, statutorily, required penalties. So should you embark on this process, and we were to hypothetically bring it back to the council for a formal declaration of surplus land in September, we're just using, September 12th as a date. If you were to go through the whole process, get letters of interest during that 60-day noticing period, and have to negotiate in good faith with anybody for a period of 90 days, then at the conclusion of that process and at the conclusion of getting HCD's compliance letter, which takes about 30 days post that negotiation period, you'd be done by about March. So it's 180 days from start to finish. Now, it could be shorter if there are exemptions on any of the properties and or the price, you can't agree on price and terms with a specific entity, then that would accelerate the process. But generally speaking, it's about 180 days. So what's next for the Surplus Land Act? The state is considering there are some primary bills up here, but there are about 10 bills floating up at the state level right now related to the Surplus Land Act to make adjustments and changes and modifications to these various statutes. Now, I highlight SB 747 because that bill, sponsored by Caballero, probably has the best chance of advancing in terms of making modifications to the bill that may not be so far on the other side of the spectrum to, usurp local control. Assemblymember Ting's bill, which is AB 480, is sort of on the other side of the spectrum. It's more restrictive. There are a lot more. They're changing the way that they look at certain penalties and making it a lot tougher for public agencies to dispose of assets for economic development purposes. So CalEd and other economic development groups are asking cities to support SB 747 because they think that has the best chance of advancing. There are other bills that are more sort of jurisdictionally focused, that are special cases. And then HCD is in the process right now of updating their guidelines on the SLA. They're supposed to come out later this summer, although with all these bills that are being floated at the state level, they may wait until something actually gets approved legislatively in order for them to come back at a later date with specific guidelines that deal with those. So as far as the primary next steps are concerned, as I mentioned, I think we've done a lot of due diligence at the front end of this process with the city to kind of look at the assets, to understand the considerations related to a preferred disposition strategy, looking at this in the context of the Surplus Land Act, and trying to figure out at the end of the day what's the preferred pathway forward. So I think should the city be inclined to move forward, we would come back in step number 2 with a formal declaration of surplus land. It's a simple resolution that says you declare these specific properties surplus and then you're going to comply with the sections of the government code that require us to. Subsequent to that declaration, we would then go to work on preparing a notice of availability. That notice of availability is pretty boilerplate at this point, but we're going to be asking for specific things from respondents. It's not just a letter of interest saying, yeah, we're interested in that site, which then would trigger a 90-day good faith negotiation period. We're going to be asking for background on the company, what you would typically see in an RFP, right? What's your financial capacity to do this deal? What's your experience? And what are you proposing specifically, on price and terms? So we would prepare that notice, And we would work with staff to do that in the city attorney's office in conjunction with them. And then at the time, that the city gave us the green light, we'd put it out for the 60-day period. We'd notice the appropriate parties, and then we would wait to see if we got any letters of interest during that period of time. And then we would advance forward either with a good faith negotiations or direct to HCD to let them know we complied with the process and we're ready to move forward. We just need your letter of compliance to do that. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a lot, but I think it's important and timely to have this type of discussion because things are evolving as it relates to the act, and this is a good conversation to have. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions? Phil?
Thank you for the presentation, Brian. Yeah, that was a lot, but it makes well, I understand it. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The Surplus Land Act, that a city can't do what it wants with its own property.
Yeah.
It has to. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Do any of our properties comply with exempt status? Have you gone that far into the evaluation?
So we've looked at it. We've looked at it. I think what's going to happen, right, is in large part the market's going to dictate what can actually be done, right, and what those uses will be.
Right.
And as you well know, the market is a little bit shaky right now, particularly with multifamily and costs going up and interest rates going up. And so, we'll have to contend with that a little bit.
Okay.
I think at the end of the day, it's how you structure your notice of availability, right? So, for instance, the reason I bring that up is because if it turns out that a certain portion of the Civic Center needs to remain public use, there are reasonable conditions that you can include in a notice that says, look, we're putting this out for surplus land, but we also need, respondents need to be mindful of the fact that, look, we need to, keep this parking, or we need to keep these public uses, or all that's going to happen, right? I mean, San Diego, the stadium in San Diego kind of went through the same issue. They went out to bid, right, to redevelop that space and figured they had to go back and go through the Surplus Land Act and sort of go through the same motions. So HCD recognizes that there are certain reasonable conditions that need to be imposed in these notices. And I think, our practice, because we're doing a lot of these, we're doing about a dozen or more of these right now, is to go to HCD and flag this with them to make sure that we don't go down a path that they ultimately say, well, you got to go back and start from the beginning. So the language in that notice is key, and working with the city attorney's office and city staff is going to be key before anything gets issued. And so we're having a lot of conversations with HCD right now. We've been on about 7 panels over the last year with HCD and the top officials there talking about the Surplus Land Act and getting their opinion on things. And so we're in regular communication with them. So,
thank you.
Mr. Ortiz, let me give you an example of something that would be or could be an exempt property.
Okay.
The current parking lot on Magnolia and Civic Center Drive, that's a public parking lot. So it's owned by the city, so it's serving a public use right now. If the city council wanted to convert that to a public building, like another city hall, a new city hall, that would most likely be exempt because it's going from one public use to another.
Got it.
So again, it's really predicated upon what direction this body ultimately chooses based upon the options that the city manager presented at the last meeting. So this is just a companion piece to that.
Got it. Okay. I had another question, but I forgot, so thanks.
You think about it, let me know.
Who determines how many units are built? If it goes out to affordable developers,
correct.
Who determines how many units get built?
So the developers come back with proposals that state how many units are to be built. Now, they have certain standards that they need to follow, right? So if you get multiple proposals, for instance, there's a standard that at least 25% of whatever units get proposed need to be set aside for quote-unquote lower-income households, right? Lower than 80% AMI. If both of those parties come back with proposals that meet that standard, the next step is to look at how many units, right? You're supposed to give priority to the party that proposes the most amount of units, right? And so if they have the most amount of units, it goes to the next stage, which is really looking at, sizing them up, sizing the product type that they're proposing, how many units they're proposing. I think while the statute, I'll just say from our experience, not necessarily what the statute inclines, we found that there are other things that a city needs to consider related to evaluating certain proposals, financial feasibility, right, or price and terms, that aren't necessarily called out in the statute, but are part of the process any city would undergo to evaluate a future project. So, notwithstanding what the statute says in terms of the process, I think we need to follow that statute, but I also think we need to consider other things that a proposal may come forward with that may not necessarily align with, what the city's goals are.
What if the city said, we don't want a 5-story building in that spot? Could it?
I think so, unless the zoning allows for it. I think you are in a better position to say that that's not something that's consistent, and we're dealing with that with a lot of communities.
And I seem to understand here, if a parcel has at least 75% of the units for low income, it's now exempt land. But you said there's also a lower bar; they have to have at least 25%.
Correct.
So who determines the percentage between 25 and 75?
So it's 75 if it's 75% based on a fully affordable project, right? If it's a mixed-use development that's that's an acre or more, then and you're going to the project, I think that may dictate how many units they really need to back into in order for that to work, that project to work.
Does the city have any right of refusal to say, we don't really want this to be an 80% affordable project? We're okay with 25%, but we'd like to see more mixed use or more medium income. Does the city have a right to say not that high of a percentage?
I think as long as, the statute outlines 25% for lower income households. That's really the standard, right? So as long as you get proposals during the noticing period that meet that standard, I think the rest of it is up to negotiation between you and a future developer. Yeah.
And at some point during the 60-day negotiation, the city could say, you know what, we're not liking any of these proposals, we're out.
Correct. Based on what the statute allows, right? If the property's appraised for fair market value and the developer, can't pay fair market value, then you have grounds to reject the proposal on that basis.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Since you brought up the political aspect with regards to the Senate and Assembly bills, do you see politically SLAs having more regulations added to it, therefore putting a larger burden on cities? Or do you see SLA laws staying the same, politically speaking, given that you're tracking those? So, and all that to inform us, do we pull the trigger now or later? Or wait, is it going to be harder?
I think the winds are shifting towards more restrictive. I think SB 747 is trying to moderate that a little bit. A bill was passed right after redevelopment dissolution, Government Code 52201, that allows cities to sell or lease property as long as it meets the definition of an economic opportunity. So that bill is in direct conflict to the Surplus Land Act.
Right.
Really hasn't been sorted out legislatively. I have a feeling they're going to tackle it in this next legislative session, right? To say that Surplus Land Act maybe trumps this Government Code 52201 that was really established for cities to pursue economic development. The shift in focus has been for housing, affordable housing at that, right? And so you're going to see fixes to the legislation, in my personal opinion, that trend towards making that still the main aim and the main goal. So if things are changed administratively or, procedurally, I think you'll see a lot of that. There are certain provisions in the bill that talk about districts and districts being allowed to do things, that may not necessarily have to go through Surplus Land Act in order to allow for, as long as you're serving the purpose of that district to be able to pursue, economic development. But what's going to shake out at the end of this legislative session is still unknown. I think it's still being, the bill's still being carved up, unfortunately.
Since you're doing a lot of these, I'm assuming across California, when a city designates and says, okay, we have surplus land and opens up the door for affordable housing developers,
sure,
are you seeing these affordable housing developers being able to capitalize on those properties quickly, or is it is it 1 out of 10? Is it 9 out of 10?
It's a mixed bag, right? Every property, every location, every zoning category or designation is different, right? So what we're seeing a lot of is affordable housing developers coming to the table with proposals that in large part require subsidies.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
They need to get the funding.
They need to get the funding.
Yeah.
They need to get the funding. Now that juxtaposed against maybe a city's RENA requirements or what they've designated in their housing element and so forth, and balancing that against, is what's the highest and best use of the property, right? Are there other areas in town that are more conducive to a housing development versus ones that we consider surplus? So I think it's a mixed bag, to be quite honest. I know that's not the best answer, but there are a lot of affordable housing developers that are taking note of the bill. I mean, if you think about it for a second, when SLA started, there was probably 100 affordable housing developers on this list that you have to notice across the state.
Right.
Now it's more like 1,000.
Right.
So developers are taking note. They're responding. They're understanding the nuances of the bill in terms of, submitting a proposal and having that, 90-day good faith negotiation period to talk about price and terms and whether or not a project makes sense. So I think, with a project of this scale and complexity, such as a civic center revitalization, I think you'll get a lot of interest.
Okay.
I personally think you'll get a lot of interest.
Okay.
But it also matters, and the city manager and assistant city manager alluded to this, is what you ultimately want to do, right? Are there public uses that need to remain, and how does that affect the economics of a land deal and a future development? And what does the market say there's demand for, and how does that fly in the face of coming up with a certain financing structure, whether it's a developer or city subsidy at some level, to make a deal actually come together and work.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the the presentation.
No
sorry. Can you tell me what HCD, what their definition of affordable housing is?
So the definition that they use is lower income households, right? That's what they're targeting. They're targeting low, very low income units.
Okay, so we're talking those who would, say, be on welfare or Social Security or like.
Yeah, 80%, right? Under 80% AMI. So if you look at the exemptions, right, 100% affordable housing project, that's 75% restricted for lower income households, could theoretically have the remainder of it be moderate, right? As long as it's 100% affordable.
Okay. And I have a question for Mr. DiMaggio and Mr. Mitchell. This presentation was brought before us for our surplus property that we're talking about at the last meeting of redoing city council chambers and alike, correct?
Yes, you recall you were presented with a number of options from the
Yes.
city manager. You asked us to kind of flesh out some more details,
Okay.
to actually maybe assign some numbers to some things, bring it back to you. This is just to let you know this is out there. This is a 6-month process that may govern in part what choice you may direct us to pursue. So it's something we're going to have to comply with in all likelihood. It's going to be based on what direction you would like us to take based upon the options that Mr. Mitchell went over at the last council meeting.
Thank you. I just need a little clarification, and then for any public members that wasn't at the last meeting. Thank you.
And I'll add to that, there's some value of doing this even before the council may know which ultimate direction it wants to go, because once you've gone through it, now you can go out to the development community with some certainty and say, this is the project that we have. We don't have to say, we'd like to do this project, however, we must go through this 6-month process first. Hopefully you're still in existence when we're done.
You know, it's interesting to me. So what is area median income? What kind of dollars are we talking? It's based on family size, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the AMI in San Diego County is $116,800. So 80% qualifies you for low income.
Oh, I know.
And a family of 4, that is like $110,000. So if your family of 4 makes $110,000, you're considered low income.
Yeah.
So this housing would really appeal to quite a wide swath of
I mean, at that 80%, we'd call that workforce housing, right? These are people that have good paying jobs that need that extra bump.
Yes.
Gary, anything? No. Quick question. So if we open the door to this and get started and put out the request for proposal, we get 3 proposals that meet the criteria, everything's right, but we just don't like them. Can we pull the plug and end this?
You have to go through the if you initiate the process and you put out the notice and you get those 3 proposals, you have to see through the 90-day good faith negotiation period. And as long as the reason for rejecting any of those proposals meets the statute, then sure, you're free to go. Now, the only caveat is that when you go through the process, if you are looking to issue the notice and you don't get any interest, then you could rescind the declaration, right? The SLA declaration. But if you get notices of interest, you're required to go through the whole process.
So it sounds like there's some risk in the sense that when we start down this road, we really don't know what it's going to look like. And if we really hate what it looks like, but they meet criteria, we're going to be kind of entrapped.
Keep in mind, though, right? It doesn't take away your ability to. The city still has the discretion to approve or deny a project, right? Those entitlements. So you still have that discretion.
Okay.
And respondents know that, right? And you don't have to sell it for less than fair market value, whatever that's determined to be.
Even based on aesthetics or design standards?
No, I think it gets back to zoning, right, and what the zoning ultimately requires. As long as it's consistent with that, I mean, you're still in the same boat that.
So, what I'm hearing is that there is some possibility that we could get started down this road and be very unhappy with where we're going, and without any ability to stop it.
Yeah, it provided that what you're unhappy with. You have the ability to go back to HCD, which you'll need to do anyways at the end of the process, and say, look, we went through this process. We got proposals. We didn't like any of them. Here's why we didn't like any of them. Price, terms, what have you. And we decided to reject all 3 on that basis. And then HCD has to weigh in and, ultimately agree with you before giving you a letter of compliance to move forward with the disposition.
I think that answers my question.
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you very much for your proposal. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
We may have some people from the audience coming up, and they may have questions for you, so if you just stay there, I appreciate it. Are there any speaker cards on this item?
No speakers on this, sir.
Okay, then. We don't need to close the public hearing. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. You don't need a motion for this. Okay. Thanks very much. We'll call it closed, and I really appreciate all the thought that went into your proposal. The second administrative report on today's agenda is item 9. It's about the downtown market nights, and I'll ask our staff to please tell us all about this. Back again.
I feel like my theme for this meeting is the city party planner. So.
Not a bad job.
Angela, can we switch over? There we go. Thank you. All right, so today we wanted to, I guess we'll wait for Mr. Goebel to get back. So today we wanted to bring to you a proposal for a market nights concept for downtown El Cajon. This is a combination of farmers market as well as nightlife, community development, just a fun way to bring a lot of activity to downtown and elevate our downtown. When we start looking at this, the first thing that I'm going to bring up is what I call the slow story, the San Luis Obispo Farmers Market. It has international recognition as a huge success story for not only a city but a region. It began in 1983, and it is attracting visitors from the entire Central Coast region, not just their town. They get visitors every week from Arroyo Grande, Pismo Beach, Santa Maria, Paso Robles, and it has definitely become an icon for a community gathering that happens on a weekly basis there. When we look at their stats, they've got 5 blocks of downtown San Luis Obispo blocked off each Thursday evening. They have produce, music, art vendors, all of their restaurants packed, and the whole idea of that market when it began was to bring more people into downtown. The stores ended up all agreeing to stay open later till 9 p.m. on that Thursday night, and now if you do go visit there, there's not a restaurant you can get into without a reservation. They have 6,000 visitors per week during their peak months, and for a much smaller town than we are. So a really great model for us to look at. The next one, I'm going to play a quick little video here of the 626 night market. It's based on a Asian-themed night market, 626 being the area code in northeast area of Los Angeles, based out of Arcadia. So we'll take a look here at their promo real quick, and I'll go into more details. Now, it's been really fascinating with that night market is not only does it take place in Arcadia since 2012, they charge tickets to get into it for a farmer's market. Not something that we're proposing, but it's become that much of a demand. And it also has a traveling road show. They go up to San Francisco Bay Area, they come down to Orange County, they do one in San Diego a year, they do Las Vegas. So again, having that night market of food, music, drinks, it's something that really has brought community together and has had such a demand that it's gone across California. They now have 250 vendors within that event. These are pictures of the Oceanside Sunset Market, which began in 2007. I actually had lived in Oceanside downtown 2006, and it was not the greatest area then. And their city had worked a lot to redevelop, bring in better business, better events to really elevate the community in that downtown region. And this market now has over 200 vendors in it on a weekly basis, also Thursday nights. It takes over 4 city blocks, live music, and an international food court with it. So when I look at our San Diego schedule of prominent farmers markets, this is where they are, and what we need to be careful on is if we're going to be enlisting vendors, we don't want to be in a competing time slot so much. Obviously, there's only so many farmers within San Diego County, so we want to make sure that they can attend us. What we're looking at as a proposal is to do a Thursday night seasonally, April through October, to keep with the best weather here and just close down during those colder months and leave people wanting more. And the location will be right downtown El Cajon. What I love about this area here, one, we've got plenty of parking. We're looking to elevate and bring people into downtown. And it's an easy area for us to be able to close off the street on Thursday nights. We still have an easy detour path that allows for the Magnolia to operate, although they don't really have that many shows in the summer, so we're not going to interfere too much there. And what we've got laid out here, and I'll go into more detail, is 3 different streets that would have different themes of the types of vendors that we'll have, as well as 3 different music stages as well. So that, again, we're not going for the old-fashioned farmers market, but it is that whole nightlife event, just a lot of liveliness, a lot of energy going into it. You'll also notice here that we've got it marketed as East County Market Nights, not El Cajon. Similar to how San Luis Obispo draws from the entire Central Coast, El Cajon is the largest city in East County, and we should be the downtown that people want to come to for a community nightlife event. So by doing it this way, our advertising plan is that we do advertise to all of East County, bring more people here. They come here each Thursday night, they learn about our businesses, and they want to come back as we continue to develop more restaurants and things for families to do downtown. It's just kind of a mood board of different things that we're thinking as far as the types of vendors we would have, as far as your traditional produce, artisan foods, food trucks and street vendors. And when I mentioned how we would break out the street map, Main Street would be your traditional, what I'd call a farmer's market. You'd have your produce, you would have the cut flowers, herbs, you'd also have the barbecues. We could have restaurants of East County that can do pop-ups, also have barbecues so that there's all the ready-to-eat foods there, and it's just this pedestrian street, all closed off to traffic, people walking down the center of the street, enjoying that family time, as well as having other vendors for kids such as face painters, balloon artists, different novelty services. Solsfeld Way, that would be more our what I'd call like a high-end grocery store of your meats, cheeses, breads, some of those higher-end consumables there, specialty food markets. And then Rhea Avenue would be our non-food craft artisans, so people who are wanting to sell handmade crafts, again, that are made locally here. We'd then also have music stages for both Centennial Plaza and Prescott Promenade. Again, we're looking at, this is not just a farmer's market, but it's a whole evening entertainment. And we want to be able to engage multiple different audiences to make this a really big event. I've got 3 stages here, only 2 we would be responsible for. One, we'd be promoting one of our local downtown businesses. So Downtown Cafe always does have live music on Thursday nights, so they would be in the center of that. They're going to have that liveliness adding to the atmosphere. We would also have Prescott Promenade and a headliner band each week at Centennial Plaza. When we look at the Prescott Promenade, the theme of that would be more families, communal dining. So we're seeing long communal tables, the bistro lights above, and more local artists that would be free musicians that would go through an audition period to do on the stage there, and then a bunch of food trucks that would be in that area. So it's more for families to buy ready-made food, sit down, kind of take a break from the street market where everyone's walking around. This gives our sit down in the nice cool area and to grab a bite to eat. And so this is just, again, a mood board of what that would look like as far as the local musicians, food truck scene, and again, those long communal tables bringing neighbors together. Then if we look at Centennial Plaza, this is where we would bring in larger big-name bands that are local but also have a really big following within San Diego. So we look at Betamax, Detroit Underground, the Groove Squad. All of those groups, when they go to play at different festivals within San Diego County, they bring their own huge audience. What I also love about that is that audience, we're placing at Centennial so that they're facing the Magnolia, they're understanding we can be advertising for that music lover that the Magnolia is going to be their place to come back in the wintertime when this market is not happening. So it's a great way to get them front and center to that building. And so again, here, this would be more the 21 and up, where we would do beer and wine tastings. Again, to keep with our farmers market theme, it's going to be San Diego County breweries, wineries, to keep that local as well, and then again, have those big name bands. So with our launch strategy, what we need, first of all, is if we approve to go forward with this, we would need to get a market manager primarily, and that would be whether we bring someone in or we contract that out, someone with the networking with a lot of the different vendors that we would want to be able to attract them, someone with event planning skills to be able to book the bands, things like that. Kickoff, what I'm proposing here is that we would do in April of 24. Again, we've got that perfect weather here in the evenings. People come out, they start getting excited about downtown, get the theme going before school gets out so that as the summer rolls, everyone continues to build the momentum for this event. The bands, again, make sure that we do book bands that bring their own following, because obviously if we're starting this from scratch, we don't have our own audience. So we're going to be leveraging on vendors that do have an audience already that can help facilitate that, because when we have new visitors coming to downtown El Cajon for this, we want them to see a crowd. And then, again, closing after Halloween, just take a break and leave for anticipation of the following year. When we look at what our marketing assets are, how are we going to get people down here? One, our social media has been growing leaps and bounds. It's a primary method of what we ended up using for National Night Out as well. We've got great impressions coming through on those with both Facebook and our Instagram pages. We've been working with, as you know, 3 different radio show hosts who are not only on 3 different stations, but have 3 of the biggest shows in San Diego and all live in El Cajon. So we've been working with them on more and more things so that they can also be promoting this and promoting that excitement of the El Cajon lifestyle. Our band fans, as I mentioned, we'll bring in these bands. That top picture is the Santee concert in the park, Betamax. Anytime I've seen them, it is an insane crowd that follows them. So that's one that would instantly bring a large group of East County residents that may never have been to downtown El Cajon. They'll come for these guys, they'll see the rest of the market and understand what's happening on a weekly basis. Community engagement. Ms. Mitchell can attest to that. Whenever the farmers market is brought up on Facebook, the commentary goes wild. It's something that our community is definitely engaged in, is looking forward to, and they haven't even seen what we're thinking as far as this hybrid of different types of market and nightlife. With our app, this is a great way to get the app not only in the hands of El Cajon residents, but everyone else, because the app can also be a tool to run this market as far as vendor maps and specials. It's something that we can definitely leverage, that people will download to have as a tool as they go through this market, see the schedule of bands and things. It would be exclusive that we keep that information on here to encourage more and more people to download and use it and see what else is there. So overall, what does Market Nights do for El Cajon? Why would we put this investment in? One is the community engagement, to create this event for all of East County to come together as a community in El Cajon, make this the downtown neighborhood for our region. The downtown revitalization, by having this weekly giant showcase, it's going to stimulate businesses. It's going to, keep the area clean, keep people understanding that this is a lively part of East County that they can come to, feel safe, enjoy, and then also engaging more and more app users to become a more integral part of El Cajon. And so that is the initial pitch there.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions? Oh, I love it. I think it's going to be a great thing.
I just have a comment. Chris, wonderful job.
Thank you.
And I think that we will help you get this going. I like this idea. I don't know about the rest of the council, but I think this is wonderful. And I think that it's something that we need. There's a lot of, as you know, you and I have talked about this, there's a lot of interest in doing a farmer's market. And if we're going to do it, we might as well go big. Go big, do it well, and try and get more engagement, try and get more people down here to downtown. And I think we'll be able to do that. You've got my support.
Thank you.
Anybody have a negative thoughts on this?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I have a positive thought.
Yeah.
This is what we've been trying to do for years and years, is to get people in downtown El Cajon for a different reason. I think it's brilliant to find vendors who have their own following, who say, let's go to someplace new, which is great. We'll have to figure out how to integrate America on Main Street and Hot Fest into the schedule, because presumably both of those could happen 2 days after a big event like this. So whether one is a substitute or, that's probably part of the discussion somehow, is what do we do with those two events vis-a-vis this program?
Got it.
I love the idea. It's fantastic. I think we have in El Cajon, this downtown area is extremely unique to East County because we have so many different areas where we can have larger events that other cities can't because they don't have that kind of space. Really, the only other downtown area is La Mesa, and they only have that one strip. But we have Centennial Park, we have the Promenade, we have a lot of different areas. So I think it uniquely positions El Cajon. And if we need to invest, I'm assuming we're going to have to invest some money into this in order to kick it off. And
I'll address that when you're done.
Okay, yeah, but I would just get ahead of it. I'd be okay with that. We need to – I've said for a long time that the market for restaurants and a lively, like, downtown vibe is here. If you look at places like the Junction off of Hamishaw, or you look at Texas Roadhouse, they're packed constantly from 1 o'clock in the afternoon on till closing. So the market is there where people want to go, they want to eat, they want to drink, they want to have a good time. But it's just, there's nothing like that downtown. So hopefully something like this will hit the fast forward button to revitalize our downtown area and inject it with steroids and get it going a little bit. So if we have to be that injection to get the downtown sparked, then let's do it.
Graham, did you want to talk about financial considerations?
Yeah, so Mr. Berg, Mr. DiMaggio, and I have been out socializing this concept to the downtown business partners, the Chamber of Commerce, the East County EDC, just to kind of get their thoughts. And it's all been positive thus far. Before we start penciling out budgets and there's going to be hard costs, but there's also soft costs. This is pretty significant in terms of time or staff time intensity. Shutting down streets is not an easy thing to do. So we'll package that all together and bring back a formal package for the city council to consider with some budget implications. But we didn't want to spend that time and effort if this was done on arrival. So this is helpful to get your feedback and your thoughts, and we'll press forward.
Isn't this what ARPA money qualifies for, economic development?
It could.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be there's some ARPA money for programming is a little more difficult than like hard, like buying stuff or capital improvements, but there may be some opportunities for that, although short term, right? So,
All right. Any other comments? Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Are any comments from
We
the public?
have no speaker cards, sir.
No speaker cards. All right. I think that's everything you need, right, Graham?
that's correct.
We need to take a short break, 5 minutes, so we'll continue the meeting. Item 10 is regarding the acceptance and termination of the Wells Park restroom emergency. I'll ask staff to tell us about this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, how are you?
City Council members and staff. I'm Sanan Kachi of the Public Works Department. I'm here to report on the emergency renovations at the Wells Park restrooms. Okay, so the restrooms were constructed in 2008 and consist of 6 individual unisex restrooms. 2 of the stalls are designed for ADA standards. Users can lock a solid door in a fully enclosed room with low lighting and poor ventilation. Hand wash sinks are located outside of the stalls on the north side of the facility, top side of the floor plan there. So the city's janitorial staff is responsible for cleaning and securing the facility at night. Around park closing time, we've had many nights where the units go uncleaned and unsecured due to locked doors with users refusing to vacate. We've even gone as far as providing police escorts in order for janitorial to get their cleanings done at night. So city crews are inundated with frequent and costly repairs, door replacements, sewer backups, other vandalism occurring to the facilities. On multiple occasions, we've had to shut down the facility completely, go to portable restrooms, as you see in the photo, for extended periods while the city makes repairs to the building or sewer lines. So Public Works and Parks and Rec staff have been studying and visiting restrooms around the county for several years. We've analyzed many different restrooms, trying to determine what's the best design or style that will work for our needs at Wells Park. We've also listened to feedback from PD, from janitorial staff, from recreation specialists to understand the issues that they're having and how we can address them through a redesign. One of the most common designs is an open beach style communal restroom with outdoors. We have examples of this here in the city, Tuttle Park and others, and then all over the county. We just showed Tidelands Park in Coronado as an example there on the right. So with the support of the El Cajon City Council, the emergency declaration was authorized in March, and we began work on the restrooms immediately. In this photo, the nearly solid roof was completely removed from the building. The doors and frames are also gone. Here we poured new slabs, beginning of new interior hallways on both sides of the building. The bars with orange caps are rebar reinforcement tied into the concrete slabs for the new walls. Here's a new exterior wall taking shape. It's about half height and will reach the top of those existing walls on the left. So these are concrete blocks with steel reinforcement and filled with more concrete. That's just more construction materials of what's there present day. So at this point, both new exterior walls are complete and tied into the structure, creating new entry points. There's now 4 entrances total to the building, 2 for the women's side, 2 for the men's, on both ends of the hallway. And now you see the roof being framed, the brand new roof. This photo really helps demonstrate the hallway additions. You have unpainted block walls versus the painted to demonstrate the new versus old construction. And a new component I haven't discussed much, the large open-air skylights. These photos show the rough wood framing for those openings, which will eventually be covered by expanded metal mesh that we selected at a local shop off Magnolia Metal Shop. So the hallways are completely open from the top, and each stall has a very large skylight. So on the left, This is as if you're standing on the roof looking down at the skylights. That's the metal mesh we've been discussing over those skylights. It's a very heavy gauge metal and powder coated to withstand the elements and potential vandalism. On the right, we also have new heavy gauge metal gates. Notice there's no hardware such as handles or locks. These are the items that our facility staffs are constantly replacing, so we wanted to remove those from the design going forward. So the new gates are simply padlocked in a fixed open position during the day, during park business hours, and then padlocked closed during the nighttime hours. So here's the completed building as it stands today with new lighting, paint, metal roofing, refurbishing of all toilets and sinks. It was open to the public just last week. We've received some positive reports over the weekend from our janitorial staff as far as having success getting it cleaned. The word's still getting out that the building is reopened for use. And then one last look at the skylight system from inside. This is in the hallway on the women's side of the restroom. There's a double layer there of the expanded metal mesh. And then just to recap an overview, the City Council approved the emergency declaration on March 28th. We immediately began construction on March 31st and ended construction on August 4th. So the City Council appropriated American Rescue Plan Act funds in the amount of $250,000, and our final construction expenditure is just under $130,000. Okay, and open up for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. How did you get so far under budget?
I think the team gave me the resources to kind of be safe, and we anticipated it actually to come in around that number. But just to kind of, so to speak, pad the budget just to be sure, because we're going into this on an emergency basis, just to be sure and not coming back later and saying, well, we're kind of out of funds.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Makes sense. Oh, let me see. Michelle, do you want to ask a question?
Thank you. Very nice presentation. I'm glad to see that I haven't been over there. It's been too hot for me. But question on those skylights. So that is open to the elements in the sense of if it's a rainy day, that bathroom's going to be wet.
Correct.
And over the stalls, the toilet paper is going to get wet if it rains or whatever?
So while the skylights are pretty large, the rainwater it could get close to the toilet rolls.
Okay.
But janitorial's in there every night and replacing those or restocking them.
Okay.
But they do have some covers over them also.
Okay.
I'll make sure that we have those covers installed on all of them, because those get damaged and kind of ripped off also.
Sure. And the only reason why I ask is that if someone needs to take their dog to the dog park, the dog's not going to care whether it's raining. They're going to take their dog to the dog park. Maybe they need to stop and use the restroom, and it's still raining. So I'm just trying to think of how that's going to affect the person doing it. But it sounds wonderful. You guys did a great job. Have you heard of any park visitors, if they've used it, and what their impression was of it?
Still pretty new. I can tell you on Thursday when we reopened, as we pulled the fences down and tape, there were people already in using it, so they were eager to get back in.
Great.
But just from our janitorial so far, that they're happy with the changes, because they were kind of the most hesitant to service the facility.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys come up with a presentation and you get it on the city website, just to kind of let us, to let the public know, hey, the bathrooms are back in order again and these are available, I'll be certainly glad to spread the word for you.
Absolutely. We have our projects page on the city website, and we can add the Wells Park bathrooms on there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
More questions or comments? Anyway, well, thank you very much. It seemed like a great project. Looks like it was really well done. Boy, you had a lot of challenges to overcome, didn't you? It's not a typical construction project.
Yes, and we didn't want that emergency to go on for 4 months, but as you can imagine, getting materials for the bathroom, we had unknown lead times on items, so that's kind of why it prolonged at the council's agenda. But we're able to get it.
I'm glad you took the time you needed to get it done right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards, sir.
All right, do you need a motion on this? Okay. Somebody like to make a motion?
I move to adopt recommendations outlined in the staff report. Does that comply? Or do I need to read each one? That complies.
You can reference the three recommendations in the
the reallocation of $129,229 of ARPA funds to economic development. Move to adopt the resolution proclaiming the acceptance of the Wells Park restroom renovations and termination of the emergency declaration, and direct city clerk to record the notice of completion with the county recorder's office.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
The last administrative report, item 11, is regarding the American Rescue Plan Act Economic Development Projects. I'll ask the city manager to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. In 2021, the City Council allocated about $4 million in American Rescue Plan Act money, or ARPA money, towards economic development projects. Unlike all the other ARPA allocations that were to a very specific project, the economic development activity was very open without a specific project. As you know, most economic development projects aren't shovel ready. It takes some time, and so we've been spending this time talking to lots of developers, talking to property owners, talking to motel owners to see if there's some opportunities to allocate some of these funds to a project. In fact, we talked to one at length near where we're at now for a hotel project that didn't come to fruition, and some other projects that haven't come to fruition. But we've got to the point right now where we think there are three projects that we think that are all eligible for the use of these funds, and wanted to present them to the City Council. As we'll see that the dollar amounts are greater than the amount allocated. We'll address that in a little bit. But I think there's some value if the council likes all three of them for us to explore them, because there's a chance that one or two of them may not happen just because of market conditions and other things that stand in the way of any economic development project. So we're looking for your feedback on these three specific projects. With all ARPA money, but specifically with economic development money, we were looking at really 5 criteria. One is this going to fund a lasting project? And I use the example of, the city could have just given an iPad to every kid in the city of El Cajon and blown all $30 million of the ARPA money. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't have a long-term, something you can look at 10 years from now and say, that's how ARPA money was used. And so we're always looking at something that's going to have a lasting impact. The other thing we're always looking at is there an opportunity to either generate revenue or create ongoing savings that will free up money to the general fund, which will allow us to do other projects like farmers markets and more police officers. The other is we're always looking at opportunities for projects to serve as catalyst projects to infuse other private development. So the idea would be we'll put in the first $1 million or $2 million or whatever of public money, and then $10 million of private money follows. So can this money be used to generate more investment in the city than would otherwise be invested? And then also to look for opportunities to either reduce blighting conditions or prevent blighting conditions from occurring. And then lastly, opportunities to provide public benefits. So those are kind of in the back of our mind as we were analyzing these different projects that we're going to present. The first one has to do, it's kind of a concept of a food hall or a restaurant marketplace. They're popping up all over the internationally, global, in the United States in particular. I presented the example of 2 that exist in the county. This is the latest one that's in the Del Mar Heights area. As you can see, there's a food court or a food hall above a Jimbo's restaurant. Just so you know, to the left of that, there's an urgent care on a second floor. So it's a wide mix of uses at this shopping facility. There's a movie theater here as well, but taking advantage of this open space above a grocery store. There's also a food hall in Little Italy, It feeds out into the piazza or the plaza. That's pretty new. So these are the two latest ones. But the idea of a food hall is you have one centralized kitchen, and then you have multiple smaller stations where different restaurants can come in and experiment and test their market. And they're kind of coming and going, not on a daily basis, of course, but usually within every other month or so, there's usually a different vendor there. And so there's a little bit of a different mix that's occurring. In our mind, as we've talked to a lot of restaurant owners and operators, there's kind of two things that are missing. One is the enormous amount of capital it takes to open up a restaurant. And we have a lot of amazing entrepreneurs in our city that would never have that kind of capital to go secure a building, do 1 year's worth of tenant improvements, buy all the equipment, be $1 million out the door before they even open up and serve their first meal. Just the capitalization is astronomical. The other group is there's a lot of entrepreneurs countywide that have thriving restaurants in their locations, and coming to an unknown market such as East County is sometimes a risk. So this actually helps eliminate the risk because they can kind of put their toe into the water, feel the market here, and then if they like it or if they grow, they can actually find their own store and operate their own restaurant on their own. So that's kind of the idea behind it. In terms of what the city, under this model, what the city would do is we would secure a building lease or purchase a building. And we'll talk about an option in closed session. We would then put out an RFP and select a management company that would operate it. We're not restaurant operators, nor pretend to be. Sometimes we pretend to be attorneys. Right, Mr. Foley? But restaurateurs were not. And then they would each have a mini kitchen, and we would help purchase and provide the equipment for those mini kitchens. And so we're providing equipment. And so once that company's on deck, they would handle the day-to-day operations. They would secure the leases. Eventually, they would assume the lease that we had, and so we would no longer be leasing a restaurant. They would be assigned to them. And then they would provide technical assistance to the restaurants and help them to grow and be a mentor to them. We believe that if we were to do this project, it would cost about $870,000. That would be a very generous amount of the city completely 100% subsidizing the lease for 18 months. We don't think it would take that long, but we're just trying to be conservative. And then in talking to some restaurateurs, the purchase of a grill, a fryer, and a salamander broiler is about $100,000 per station. So there's up to $600,000 if the site we found had up to 6 stations. Any questions about this concept before I move on? And we just kind of do each one at a time.
I know I love this idea. I would especially love it if it was in the downtown area. Actually, this weekend, I just went to the food hall in Liberty Station with my kids, and they had a live band there and a little and we got food for whatever the kids wanted. We could pick and choose, so it was fantastic. So I had to travel to Liberty Station to get the food hall experience. And, I mean, I don't know where in downtown we'd do it, but if we could find a place to do it in downtown. We just had the presentation about market nights. We're looking to invest. I think that would be ideal. So,
Mr. Ortiz, we actually agree that this model probably only works in the downtown. Some of our restaurants thrive in the evening, but many of our restaurants in the downtown are not very busy, even though there's a lot of people employed in the downtown area. So we think that this would help meet that niche market. Any other questions about this, or do you want me to move on and we can answer questions at the end? Mr. Goldman.
Tenant improvements. I see equipment. I see the lease. What about a?
Yeah, we'd like to avoid tenant improvements. Have the manager do that, or the market manager do that. Partly because it triggers prevailing wage. It'd just be easier for them to handle it, and we think it'd be ultimately cheaper. It does depend on the building. I mean, if we find the right turnkey building, then probably the amount of tenant improvements would be light. But if it's a complete complete tear down or gut and replace, then there may be a need for some tenant improvements. So this could be on the low side for a dollar amount. All right, moving to the next idea. As you know, part of the thing that we've been looking at, and council directed staff to look at opportunities to work with some of our motels or some of our I'll call failing motels or substandard motels to see if there's opportunities to redevelop them. And we've actually talked to quite a few of the motel operators in the city and continue to work with a couple on it. But one of the motels that we did discuss with the city council, and the city council allocated funding for an appraisal, is the Travelodge on West Main Street. And that appraisal just recently came in. So the motel is marked by the yellow arrow. The idea of this redevelopment project would be to use the purchase of it to help assemble a larger 2-acre area around it and then redevelop it primarily with housing or mixed-use development. As you can see in that upper right-hand corner, that graded dirt, that is actually the City Ventures project just down the street. So this project actually becomes this really interesting linkage between that project and the downtown, which is just this is technically the downtown, but I'd say the core of the downtown is a block or two just to the east. So this project actually is in really close proximity to a lot of already activity occurring in the downtown area. This project by right is allowed to be 40 units per the acre. So based on 2 acres, it could be up to 80 units. Just so you know, City Ventures which is shown on the left corner, that's 26 units to the acre. So you can kind of get a sense of the density there. And then the Cornerstone, which is almost kitty corner to this property, is 70 units to the acre. So much more dense than what would be allowed under the zoning. So just give you a sense of some of the density that's already occurring in that area and the infusion of some additional what we would require market rate housing in that area. So we talked about the number of units and sort of that linkage we think that's important to sort of bridge the City Ventures project and really ultimately the transit district properties a little bit further down the street actually. So there's this interesting linkage of projects moving down. There's some real advantages of the city purchasing the motel, although it did appraise for $4.5 million, so it's more than we have in the budget just with one project. But there's also even more advantages to us utilizing our resources to help with off-site improvements, and that would help the developer have the ability to go out and purchase the motel property. So I think there's some opportunities to explore, but we would, if the council likes this project, then will allow us to talk to developers, allow us to engage with the property owner and try to make a deal happen and help. If we don't end up being the ones that purchase it, we could certainly be the ones that help facilitate the purchase of or the sale of it. And we think that probably we should think about mentally at least an allocation of $2 million, if not a little bit more, to make this project pencil. Any questions about this project specifically?
Yes. Allocation $200 million. Okay. So what if we were to go forward with this particular project? That takes one of those motels that have been used for hotel vouchers, whatever. It takes them offline and makes it more into housing.
44 units would come off the motel inventory, which would help the other motels.
Okay, that should make some residents happy. Thank you.
More questions?
We're operating under the assumption that the owner of the motel wants to sell.
That's correct.
Okay, great.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Graham.
Okay, moving to the last one. We've been talking a long time about helping to get a business incubator or accelerator launched and moving in our community. There's an opportunity for the city to purchase a building right now that's on the market or about to come on the market that would we would purchase it, secure an operator to operate the incubator, And in talking to this entity, I think there would be some focus on a restaurant. I know at one point there was a focus at 100% restaurant, but we have so many entrepreneurs that have so many business ideas. We think there's a lot of value in it being available to a lot of different opportunities, but restaurant being one of those opportunities. And then that operator would then provide training. If there is a need for kitchen space, they would provide the cooking or kitchen space. They would provide, if it was a restaurant, that they would focus on creating opportunities for serving or tasting. But they would also provide the mentoring, the business writing plans, connecting them with investors, helping them further develop their idea. And in the meantime, they're using free office space to develop those ideas with this umbrella of mentors and trainers around them and help launch them. Most incubators work under a manner where there's some upfront assistance at the beginning, but as they become successful and move on, some of their earnings go back into the organization. So there's this continuity of revenue that then supports the next business. You call it a perpetual incubator accelerator format. So we think there's some opportunity there, and we'll, again, in closed session, talk about specific building or real estate and some of the terms and conditions around that real estate. We think that could be up to $2.5 million. That would include the cost of the purchase of the building, along with some basic renovations. And then in our mind, the proceeds of the rent that would be generated would then be put back into the incubator, and that would be the city's allocation or contribution to that incubator. So this could go on and on and on, where the ARPA money could be utilized one time. It would continue to generate revenue and be put back into the incubator. So as I said at the beginning, if you add up all these numbers that are in the staff report, it comes up to almost $5.5 million. And as I indicated, we only had $4 million allocated to economic development in the ARPA funds. So there is a shortfall of some money. Again, we don't know if one of these projects falls through, it frees up some money. There may be an opportunity to look at other funding sources. I think all three of these projects have a lot of long-term potential and something that general fund reserves could be used for. They meet some of those criteria, as kind of one-time expenditures. It helps catalyst a project. Some of the things that we looked for in the ARPA money also are things that we look for in the use of general fund reserves as well. So with that, we're looking for kind of four things from the City Council. One, are these projects worth funding? If they are, which ones do you want us to prioritize? And then what questions do you have and feedback that will help us kind of move forward in the next direction? So with that, I'm here to answer any questions that you have and curious to hear your feedback on these projects so we can get to work.
Questions? Michelle? What's that? Oh, yeah, sure.
So you asked for prioritization. Thank you. Since we're working on the market, the farmers market, I'd like to move the motel. My idea would be to move the motel up to first place and make that a priority. Then possibly the incubator, and then go to the food hall. Only because we've got the farmers market. We're working on that project, and that's going to be a lot of food right there. So I'd kind of like to maybe move that into those steps: motel, incubator, and then food hall. Other than that, I think these are great projects, and I think they will bring a lot of interest. I think there's, like you say, we have a lot of entrepreneurs. They just need that space. They need that little bit of guidance to take them to the next step. And why not provide something that lets our residents become business owners and become more, if we help them out here, who knows what they can contribute to our community as a whole once they get over that hump. So I think these are great ideas, and if we can afford it, then we might as well do it, but that's my 2 cents.
More?
this point, I like the prioritization that Councilmember Mitchell has pointed out.
Okay. Phil?
A quick question. I know the answer, but I think I know the answer. The timeline for spending the ARPA funding, there is a timeline on this, and when is that?
December 2024.
And so in order for us to spend all of this so it doesn't go to waste, so we don't lose the money, I should say, ideally, when do we need to have projects lined up? Are we in the first quarter? Are we in the fourth quarter?
We're about halftime right now.
We're halftime.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there's some urgency.
There's some urgency. We're running out of time. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So comment, I guess, would be I love all three of them. I mean, the motel for obvious reasons. I would love to link up that City Ventures property with that property. Spark growth. Love the incubator idea. I would say maybe if there's opportunities for great ideas for a business for the incubator to sponsor or whatever you call it, and it's not a restaurant, let's be open to that as well. I think about Connor with Tour Knives. I mean, his testimony is he started in a garage, and so how many more of these Connors do we have or whoever in the city? And now he's one of the biggest tenants in the city of El Cajon. He's taken over 15 storefronts in one of our industrial areas. So I think about how many more of those. So keeping that open. So yeah, I'd say the incubator and the motel are number one for me, and the food hall concept. I mean, it's such a small amount. I'd be 100% okay reaching into general fund reserve to test that concept, considering the market nights it could boost it. So thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, no. Go ahead. Make your comments.
My first was the food hall, because I think that is the most quick way to get to one place. I would reserve, you and I talked, I would reserve one of the spots perhaps for a local startup contest, entrepreneur, somebody wants to see if they can make their product a go, something like that. Number two for me was the incubator, and that was, the challenge there is filtering who gets the spot. That's one of the challenges of incubators is a lot of people want this great deal, and the operator has to filter them. So that's important who he chooses. But it's also quick to market in terms of acquisition and do. The motel, I don't see us spending that money in the next 15 months because the former Kozak's restaurant is one parcel. The motel is a second parcel. And a developer in 15 months has to close a deal on the acquisition of those two parcels for a development. And certainly $2 million from us could sweeten the deal. But I think at that time, if it happens, that could be a general fund thing because we know we're getting a return on that general fund one-time money. So mine was food 1, incubator 2, and motel 3.
Anybody else? I think the hotel and the food court or the food mall are both really good ideas. And I need more information about the incubator before I could give you more feedback. All right, let me see if there's any public comment on this.
We have no speaker cards, sir.
Okay, then I'm looking for a motion.
So I think the motion would be just if council's okay with staff working on all three of these, we will work and then bring back more details, and then there'll be actual action items for the council in the near future.
Yeah, I think you've got all the feedback you need.
That's very helpful, council.
All right, thank you. The next item is my activities report, which is as reported. And let's go on through the activity reports of the rest of the council. Gary Kendrick.
As reported.
Mr. Steve Goble?
I do have a couple of statements. The license plate reader program has turned out to be a huge success. And on social media, the people who live in El Cajon are so thankful for this. And the critical comments are from people who live in Alpine, Blossom Valley, Winter Gardens, because they feel this is intrusion into their rights. But yet the people of El Cajon are, thank you, this is about time that we get a great tool to keep bad things from happening in El Cajon, and already it's shown quick results. So I think the people of El Cajon are all for this project.
Yeah, I've got nothing but positive feedback.
Yes. It's the people outside of the city who seem as a threat to their liberties for some unvalid reason. The fire department had a great open house, again, over the weekend, and again, a big crowd. MTS, some things to report there. I think I did see a utility or public works crew out power washing some sidewalks today. That was like, wow, they look really great. The public works was also really fast to respond to a broken a chain saying don't cross your sidewalk here by the Jack in the Box in front of Graves and Broadway. I submitted that yesterday about 3 o'clock. It was done by 10 this morning. MTS is going to be doing what's called a fare evasion pilot test in El Cajon. So Councilmember Hall and Santee and myself, as East County people, we would like to see addressing the fare evasion that goes on the trolley. So what they're going to do on a couple of Wednesdays, and I'll give you more details as they're solidified, on a couple of Wednesdays they'll do what's called a swarm. Well, they'll bring a bunch of code compliance officers who will get on at a Maya Drive, check 100% of the passengers for fare compliance, and if they don't have one, they will have to get off in El Cajon. Now, this is a potential concern because does that mean that people who would have gotten off in Santee are now getting off in El Cajon because it got kicked off, and they don't get put back on a trolley the other way going back to where they came from because that would be fare evasion going the other way. So I think just for a couple of Wednesdays, if we can just be patient, but I will let certainly all those details that come along. August 19th, which is just a couple of weeks away, the El Cajon Elks Lodge is holding a law enforcement appreciation dinner from multi-agency. Captain Ranswire and myself will be co-hosting that particular event. Looking forward to that just in a couple of weeks. At the El Cajon Transit Station, the third track construction is pretty much done. That is, then it has to be, of course, finished. Open next spring. That will just be a one train from El Cajon to Santee back and forth. And the orange and the green lines will terminate at the El Cajon Transit Center. Santee ought to be cheering us immensely because if you don't want to pay a fare and you want to go to Santee, now you have to get off one train, wait several minutes, and then got another train to go further out. So good for them. The Advanced Water Purification Project is on budget. We're about halfway through at this point. It's going to be completed at the end of 2025. And it is doing very well, on budget, on time. Everything's looking good. We did have one of the three directors pass away this week from cancer. Sadly, he was a long-time, Augie Karras was a long-time director and general manager of Padre Dam, and we wish him and we wish his family our condolences and thank him for his work. That is all of my report.
Mr. Ortiz? Ms. Mitchell?
As reported.
Thank you so much. There are no joint council member reports and no general information items, and no first or second reading of ordinances on today's agenda. We're now at closed session. The city attorney will recite the title and lead us into the closed session.
Thank you, Mayor Wells. The city council is going to go into closed session on 3 items, 17, 18, 19 on the agenda. Each of them is a closed session for a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. Each of them have as a negotiating party, and the city's negotiators, the city manager, assistant city manager, and the city attorney. And under each of them will be negotiation for price and terms for payment of either acquisition or lease. The first property that's going to be one of the property item 17 is located at 425 West Main Street, and the negotiating party is intended to be Hitesh Patel with Jala Inc. which is the owner. The second one is located at 110 North Magnolia Avenue. That's number 18 on the agenda. And the negotiating party on the ownership side is Howard Fisher. And that one will be a negotiation on a lease. And number 19 is it's at 405 East Lexington Avenue, Centro de Salud de la Comunidad de San Isidro, Inc. Kevin Matson is the CEO. That is a negotiating party, and that's for acquisition.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion then to adjourn to closed session. Please vote.
Motion carries by a 4. Right. Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to closed session. We'll be back in hopefully a fairly short period of time to end the meeting. Thanks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back from closed session. I'd like to have our city attorney report on the happenings of closed session.
Okay, and first, Mayor, I think you need to disclose the disqualification on item 19, I think.
Yeah, I recused myself from item, it was 19?
Yes.
Item 19 because of a business relationship I have with San Ysidro Health.
Yeah, the owner of the building is a source of income to you or your business.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
So the council met in closed session on those 3 closed session items and gave direction to the negotiators on all 3. Again, Mayor Wells disqualified himself and recused himself from participating in item 19.
Thank you, sir. This brings us to adjournment. The regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 8th day of August 2023 is adjourned until Tuesday, September 12th, 2023 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.